The Jungle was a book written by Upton Sinclair in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was about an immigrant family that came into the United States. One of the family members' name was Jurgis, and one was Elzbieta, and this is part of that story. With one member trimming beef in a cannery and another working in a sausage factory, the family had a first-hand knowledge of the great majority of packing town swindles. For it was custom, as they found, whenever meat was so spoiled that it could not be used for anything else, either to can it or else to chop it up into sausage. With what had been told them by Jonas, who had worked in the pickle rooms, they could now study the whole of the spoiled meat industry on the inside, and read a new and grim meaning into that old packing town jest, that they use everything of the pig except the squeal. Jonas had told them how the meat that was taken out of the pickle room would often be found sour, and how they would rub it up with soda to take away the smell, and then sell it to be eaten on free lunch counters. Also, of all the miracles of chemistry which they performed, given to any sort of meat, fresh or salted, whole or chopped, they could give it any color and any flavor and any odor that they chose. In the pickling of hams, they had an ingenious apparatus by which they saved time and increased the capacity of the plant. A machine consisting of a hollow needle attached to a pump. By plunging this needle into the meat and working with his foot, a man could fill a ham with pickle juice in a few seconds, and yet, in spite of this, there would be hams still found spoiled, some of them with an odor so bad that a man could hardly bear to be in the same room with them. To pump into these, the packers had a second and much larger pickle, which destroyed the odor, a process known to the workers as giving them 30%. Also, after the hams had been smoked, there would be some that had been found to gone bad. Formerly, these had been sold as No. 3 grade. But later on, some ingenious person had hit upon a new device, and now that they could extract the bone, about which the bad part generally lay, and insert in the hole a white-hot iron, after this invention, there was no longer No. 1, No. 2, and No. 3 grade. There was only No. 1 grade. The packers were always originating such schemes. They had what they called boneless hams, which were all the odds and ends of pork stuffed into casings, and California hams, which were just the shoulders, then big knuckle joints, and nearly all of the meat had been cut out, and fancy skinned hams, which were made of the oldest hogs, whose skin was so heavy and coarse that no one would buy them. That is, until they'd been cooked and chopped fine and labeled as head cheese. Which, by the way, there's no cheese in head cheese. It's the head of the animal, usually a pig, that's been boiled down for a long time, like 8 hours. And then all the meat they take out of the head and they stuff it into a sausage, and it comes out looking like the meat that you see right behind the pig image. It was only when the whole ham was so spoiled that it came to the department of Elzbieta. It was cut up by 2,000 revolution-a-minute flyers and mixed with half a ton of other meat. No order that was in a ham could ever make any difference. There was never the least attention paid to what was cut up for sausage. There would come all the way back from Europe old sausage that had been rejected and that was moldy and white. It would be dosed with borax and glycerin and dumped into big hoppers and mixed all over again for home consumption. There would be meat that had tumbled out on the floor, in the dirt and in the sawdust, where the workers had trampled and spit uncounted billions of consumption germs. There would be meat stored in great piles in rooms, and the water from leaky roofs would drip all over it, and thousands of rats would race about on it. It was too dark to see these storage places too well, but a man could run his hand over the piles of meat and sweep off handfuls of dried dung of rat. The rats were nuisances, and the packers would put poisoned bread out for them. They would die, and then the rats and the bread and the meat would all go in the hoppers together. There's no fairy story or no joke. The meat would be shoveled into carts, and the man who did the shoveling would not even trouble to lift out a rat, even if he saw one. There were things that went into the sausage in comparison with which a poisoned rat was just a tidbit. There was no place for a man to wash his hands before they ate their dinner, and so they made a practice of washing them in the water that was to be ladled into the sausage. There were the butt-ends of smoked meat, and the scraps of corned beef, and all the odds and ends of the waste plant that would be dumped into these old barrels in the cellar and left there. Under the system of rigid economy where the packers enforced, there were some jobs that it was only paid to do once in a very long time, and among those was cleaning out these waste barrels. Every spring they did it, and in the barrels there would be dirt and rust and old nails and stale water, and cartload after cartload would be taken up and dumped into hoppers with fresh meat and sent out to the public's breakfast. Some of it they would make into smoked sausage, but as the smoking took a long time and was therefore expensive, they would call upon their chemistry department to preserve it with borax and to color it with gelatin to just make it look brown. All of their sausage came out of the same bowl, but when it came to wrap, they would stamp some of it special, and for this they would charge 2 more cents per pound. So when Upton Sinclair wrote this, it was supposed to be about, learning about what it was like to become an immigrant into the United States and work in one of these factories. But what it ended up doing is being an expose of the meat industry itself. Really shocked people to know how the meat was being produced.